Hello, everyone. Welcome to eLearnChat, where you always learn something new. And today we've got with us, I think it's his third visit on the show. We have with us Tim Loudermilk. He is with Curator Solutions, and in particular, he developed the Alaris application development tool for e-learning. Tim, how are you?
Great, Rick. How are you doing?
I am doing great, and it's good to have you back on and talk about kind of something exciting that just happened to you, the company, and to the product.
Yes. Well, we just spent the weekend in Philadelphia at the American Council on Education's annual conference, where we released the first widespread implementation of the Alaris Curator solution for rapid learning development for on-demand learning to their membership. So outside of a normal learning management system, but available to all the members of that program, would be the ability to get small snippets of learning on a daily basis, on a constant basis, by the type of role they had or by subject they were interested in, things that are really relevant and just in time.
And that's not a small feat, because the American Council for Education is a pretty large council. Most major universities belong to it. So congratulations on that. That's not like I said, not a small feat.
It was exciting to be involved. So
yeah, I can imagine. So your software right now is running then that part of what they do.
It is. It's the underlying platform for their ACE Engage library that is available to all their members, and it delivers everything from a 5-minute podcast to a white paper about a certain subject to a news article that's from a video feed, all delivered on demand, right to folks based on their interest level and or what they've set up in their profile. So we're very excited about it, and frankly, it's just great to be involved with such a wonderful organization for us.
So you're taking their content, and I know part of what you wanted to talk about today was using existing libraries and then moving them to a different library, to a different content management system. So is that in essence what you did with this project, where you take a lot of their content, and they probably have tons of content, and then put that into a format that they can easily access?
Right. There's a couple of ways that you can get content, and one is in the process of building an online course or an online lesson. You can tag certain content that's in that, whether it be an audio or a video or any other learning object type, and you could reference it into a series of multiple tags based on its relevancy to different subjects. So it could be relevant to admissions, could be relevant to diversity, could be relevant to a lot of different financial aid, to lots of different subjects that are important to that community, as an example. And then as that gets built, it gets put in the content management system. And when people are logging in, when the user of the system is logging in the other side, it looks for everything relevant, delivers to them right in time. So you can put it in that way. Then the second way is, of course, we provide direct access to it so that you can really bulk upload lots of videos, lots of white papers, lots of podcasts, things like that into the platform, and then tag them appropriately so that they're retrievable by folks relevant to what their role or interest is.
That, it's funny. A lot of people talk about learning content management systems, and yet for some odd reason, they still seem to be one of the hardest things to implement. Now, what have you folks done? And I know a little bit about your product. What have you folks done to make it easier? Which it is. It's fairly easy on your system, whereas with a lot of LCMSs and CMSs, it's kind of a pain. People have to really wrap their brain around the whole structure of what a content management system does. And these aren't database people. They are trainers, they're academicians, they're developers, a different mindset. What have you folks done to make that more accessible to everybody?
One is we put inclusion into that content management system for this purpose, part of their normal workflow. So they don't have to go do another task. It's part of their normal workflow. If they're building a lesson and they find a great video about a subject, they can tag it, put it in the curation system that the library will retrieve. So one is we didn't make them do a second task. The second is that we didn't use a simple tagging of an object like you can tag any file system in the operating system or on the internet. We used a pretty sophisticated backend that built the taxonomy of the subject matter custom to the actual intent of the system. So by having a very sophisticated taxonomy, but very simple learning objects, we actually, I think we're able to achieve something really unique. So I like to think that we built the content management system that's not that complicated to the end user.
Yeah, I know people who've implemented some more complex content management systems or LCMSs, and they've all failed. And you just go, and it didn't, not that the company failed making the software, the companies that bought it failed. And you just go, and looking at it from an old programmer perspective and an analyst, I would say what they run into more often than not is the users don't have the mental training or understanding of how a database works and how things are tied together and how to get things out. And as a result, or the concept of reusability, where you can reuse content over and over. You don't have to create it 100 times. And
Right.
that's where the people's brains explode. That's what we've seen throughout the years. And invariably, in about 10 different sites we've worked at where they had an LCMS, we got it. We said, this is great. And they went, we don't get it. And so we tried to explain it. No luck. We tried to make it simple. No luck. And then they would say, okay, we get it. And then they duplicated everything they did 400 times. And you go, no, that's not an LCMS. So that's what we found that was what was hard for them, for the end users to grasp, was the concept of reusability, reusing content, rather than put it out there 30 times, 40 times. Let's say you have a header, a common header that you want to use everywhere. Rather than put it out there 500 times for 500 different courses, you put it out once, and then you use it as you need it, or variations of that. Nope, 500 times. Right. And so every time they went to modify something, it was hellacious. Nothing ever got modified because some things were not duplicated, some things were. But it wasn't easy for them to figure out what was what because they couldn't understand the report that said were used. So this was really a hard problem to solve for most people. In your LCMS, from what I've seen, it's actually a fairly simple thing because you're kind of taking the should I say it this way? You're taking the analysis out of it for them. You're just giving the practical part of it.
I think that's true. And we also allow them to, or enable them to really not only do individual objects, but collections of objects. Mm-hmm. So you could save a lesson, and that lesson could be something that you put in the curation system that's always intact. So you tend to be able to deploy that maybe easier than trying to find every individual little object. The other thing we did is we followed an academic model, which is a little different for all the years I spent in corporate learning. We actually have the complete concept of a master course and sessions. So if you create a master course to the platform, we allow you to deploy it in as many sessions, often the same curriculum is being taught by multiple faculty.
Okay.
And when you deploy in that fashion, we didn't want to miss one important thing, though. We wanted the actual faculty member to be able to augment it with their own learning. I want to put my notes in. This is my class. This is not a class I've just bought off the shelf. It's something that while the core material's in there, I want to add my own experience, my own personality to it. So we enable the teaching faculty to add those components, yet not really alter the master course that has been created by the university. So that model really helps it become easier to use, frankly. And I hope that corporate learning will adopt somewhat of that model. And even if it's just based on time, like here's the fall session and here's the next spring session.
Right. And they could. They don't think of it always quite that way, but they think it in terms of of compliance and this and that, new hire training, whatever they're doing. But those are the same ideas. And they have modules usually underneath those with a lot of different lessons and content objects. But you're right. A lot of people don't think of it as something I can reuse later in a different course, or I can reuse it many times in different courses. And I like what you just said, that not only can you reuse it, you can personalize it. So that makes sense. So when you say you can personalize, for example, a course or a lesson within a course, that means an instructor could take it, add their comments to it, whatever, and still leave the original lesson intact, correct?
Correct. So they would be able to, really anywhere, but more often at the end of every section of the course or every chapter or every week of the course, it's supplemental material that professors providing that's relevant. Frankly, they've been providing this material for years in lots of other ways, so why not build that into the process and allow
Sure.
them to do it here? So it really, I think it's a real benefit. Also, they can build assessments. They can add their own series of assessments. It doesn't have to always be the same. And what I'll say, current events materials, things that are happening today that are relevant that they want to include in the class, makes it a bit more interesting for the students.
Another thing that we've run into is question pools. When people create pools or banks of questions that then they can reuse anywhere they want. And we see the same thing happen where people create 5 question pools. And you kind of look at them, they're all the same. But they may have one question different. You just go, what were they thinking? They weren't. It was not understanding, again, the solution to the problem. They create another problem. So these are all things that at least I see in the corporate world. We don't really deal that much with academics, but when we do, it's a slightly different mindset because, again, they're focused 100% on teaching. The corporate world's focused on training a certain amount of people by a certain date to be able to perform certain job functions. But it is interesting how content often is not understood as content. It's understood as just a thing that's segmented into one area. So people are kind of a little narrow-minded or tunnel-visioned on that. So that's, I guess, where the training always has to happen. How to make people understand how the tools work and how to get that together. Though it's not that hard. And like you're saying, in your system, it's fairly easy, fairly straightforward to create those kind of things, and that makes it fun. What do you see as some of the futures of content management systems or LCMSs? Do you think they'll become more prevalent? The more they hide themselves, do you think they'll become more prevalent and useful?
You know, what I would say is maybe not as a general category if they stick to the definition of a content management or an LCMS, because I had to break a couple of rules in creating the Alaris Curator solution. One is content is obviously, content management is a key part of it, but I had to edge over towards the authoring tools and allow you to create and insert content of all sorts from all different places, because without it becomes a kind of a monumental task to set up and configure your LCMS. Yes.
Yep.
And then we had to also, on the other side, break the rules and enable publishing to all the LMSs from the content management system. So really, it's really, when people ask us about Alaris Curator, it's kind of hard to define us as one component in the center. We steal a few things from over here and we steal a few things from over here to make it effective for the user. So I think that maybe that's what's going to happen. Maybe content management that has an ability to publish or to integrate into other platforms is really the trick. It's content management is used by most publishers, print publishers, for a long time to manage all their long-term assets, but they weren't using it as a targeting creator of the magazine they were publishing. And so I think that's what we're trying to do differently. We're trying to be your safety for intellectual property, your building tool that allows you to assemble all these things, the curation system that allows you the maximum flexibility how you're going to use it, and then the publishing capabilities that can push the content about anywhere. We enabled not only publishing to the LMSs, but to mobile devices in the Google Play and Apple Store, even though we keep those as well called connected devices that communicate back. So I think that my hope is that there's more delivery systems to the student or employee base become more and more sophisticated, that the tools get better at publishing. I think our biggest challenge is keeping up with all the innovative ways people are going to deliver the content, not necessarily just in the building.
Now, you did one thing with Alaris, which I find interesting, and it took me a while to get. Having been an author or a developer in e-learning for 30 years, things change, and a lot of what we've been doing has changed. And for example, I look at a tool like yours, like Alaris, and at first I go, what do I do with it? Not because it's hard. It's exactly the opposite, because it's a simpler approach to getting the same kind of content out there. It's just changing the mindset, because authoring tools on the whole tend to be more complex. And you develop Trivantis, so Trivantis Lectora, and a lot of people who use Lectora always think it's a very full, hard, complex. It wasn't hard, but it had a ton of functionality and capabilities to do things. And yet, for certain things, people thought it was too difficult, especially simpler things or or areas where you just need a little bit more flexibility, or the content didn't have to be that complex. Navigation could be different. So a tool like Alaris is taking a different approach, where you're looking at content in a way that, and like you said, you took kind of the hypercard approach, where you have cards that hold content, can hold a lot of content, can hold a little content, just depending on how you structure the cards. You could have an e-learning course that could be 10 videos, 10 video cards, and you're done. Pretty simple. That's actually pretty straightforward, without having to think too much about your navigation or anything else. It just works. Or you could have something much more complex, where you've got video mixed in with text, mixed in with graphics and audio, etc. That could be all on one page. It could be all on multiple cards. One card could be many pages. Another card could be a one page, or another card could be text or just videos or whatever else you're doing. The approach is not hard. It's different. And I like the difference because it makes you think differently. Because I'm looking at a lot of what people complain about e-learning, and a lot of people don't like the length of e-learning classes. That's a given. They're too long more often than not. And they don't like the fact that it's a much harder learning curve. And when it comes down to it, and you look at what people are developing, not everything has to be that complex. It could be pretty simple, or it could be hard, depending if you need to. What was your thought when you developed Elearis? Because you took a totally different approach from what you did with Lectora. It's definitely a different mindset. I'm curious, what brought you to this approach?
Well, a couple of things. One is I started with the educator in mind, and have two educators on staff that greatly influenced me. And the first thing I did was let them sit down and use the other products I'd built. And I was very proud of it. I still have a lot of respect for the folks at Lectora, and they're still friends. Yet the educators said, we'll never use this as educators. So I knew I missed the mark in that product so many years ago. And so I went to the idea of, okay, I need a tool that subject matter experts and educators would actually use, that would actually engage with. And just this past week, I had an opportunity to spend about 20 minutes with the president of one of the largest universities out west, and he said our problem is getting our faculty to engage with the platform, whether it's Blackboard. It was Blackboard. Our problem is getting professors engaged in doing it. And I showed him what we're doing, and he said, "Wow, that might actually work." So we actually took from the perspective that, hey, this is so easy to use that you can pop your content in and get it into the platform and never have to log into the Blackboard platform, for example. So that was a pretty neat thing. But I took it from an end user standpoint, and I had to abandon the idea that I thought I'd done a great job creating a really good user interface for my lab products.
You did, by the way.
It felt a little weird. It was really hard for me to do, but I listened to the educators around me, and I listened to people smart people at Vanderbilt and Belmont and Dartmouth that we had worked with that said, this is what we really want. And so I really hope we've achieved that. So far, the response has been pretty overwhelmingly positive, because we thought about creating a big, long training course for Alaris, but really there's no need for it. You log in, it's pretty evident what you need to do. We have a 22-page user guide. If you read the entire user guide, I think you'd be the expert. So it's really an attempt to do that. But sometimes to make something look really easy, you have to make it really complicated behind the
right.
So I think that's so you enter your credentials to the learning management system and where you want it to go, and we do the rest. So that's kind of a neat way to make it happen. So really we save them time, and we're going to spend some time over the next few months with some folks doing some testing of our solution versus the way that it used to happen. And we believe right now that we're going to save about half the time in developing typical learning. I would like to be able to say more, but I think I'm confident that half the time it takes to build with the other platforms, you'll be able to build with this and to build and deploy with ours.
I could see that, because a lot of time spent in authoring tools is in getting the navigation right. Actually, that's one area where Lectora, for example, had very good, solid navigation, which not all the other authoring tools have always. It was very easy to navigate across multiple, because you took the same sort of approach. It was whatchamacallit. You had your chapters, your pages, and your subsections, and it was really easy to navigate in that book kind of structure. Of course, nowadays nobody reads books, so they're probably going, "What's that mean?" We see that a lot too. So the approach I think you're taking now is similar in some respects to Lectora, but without the more cumbersome part of laying things out in a much more complicated manner, creating a different kind of navigation that was probably a little more complex than it needed to be, though we had no problem with it. We liked it. But it is a different approach, and I think that's where it's funny. It's let's call it unmuddling the mind a little bit from thinking of all the things you have to do to thinking of not so much what you have to do, but what kind of content to present. And I think I believe that's where you're going, because it seems content in this case is king, whereas you don't have to worry so much about the little things, and there's a lot of little things. It's a lot easier.
The other thing we did, which is a little hidden, but we did this because we knew that instructional designers would just demand it, is we give them the ability to design a style sheet, a CSS, put it into the platform, although you don't have to use it. It can override the navigation when you publish to the learning management system. Okay. So we give them the ability to do that, but frankly, just through a very simple, straightforward CSS. So we make sure that CSS exists in the learning platform and in ours, and then it's just usable by the subject matter experts building the content. So they select from a series of those if that's what they want, and that gives them the ability to do custom navigation. Well, I have to say there's only a few that are choosing to do that. Where we do use it often is that they want certain headline fonts and certain text body fonts that are always consistent. So they can go in and put a very simple CSS in that enables that, yet still lets the learning management system's navigation control. And that's very useful. So
that's pretty good. So where do you see the industry going? Where do you see the adoption of tools like yours as becoming more of a standard, more of a... And again, one thing, just to be clear for those who haven't seen the tool, take a look at some of our previous shows, go online and take a look at some of the Alaris demos. It has more the feel of a web development tool because it flows more like a web tool. It's not an encapsulated, you're in a browser, so that you're thinking more web now, you're thinking more web design. Is that one of the approaches, to go more towards a web design approach? So something people already understand. They know how to build simple pages. Is that one of the approaches?
Yeah, it is. I think being web-based makes you think a bit differently about how the flow has to work for the person on the other end. Also knowing that they're not going to be that person is going to be a subject matter expert or a trainer or an educator, and I think that's just a different perspective. I'm starting with a different place, and I thought I would be. Maybe discouraged by some of the super technical developers in learning, but in reality, the opposites happen. They realize if they're busy that we can save them time by using this with their subject matter experts. So there'll be some combination of those tools and ours working together in the market as well, I think. But I actually believe that what's next for what's happening is that there will be a slight complication that goes into solutions like Alaris, and I'll tell you what ours is going to be, because Tim Varelli and Darren Lucan and I have been working on this for a while, and that is we're going to give you a conditional card that allows you to, based on a certain condition, we're going to allow you to branch to a module that maybe doesn't exist in the normal flow of the course. And what that means is that structure, I can say, wow, this person's really advanced, send them here. This person needs to work on this certain subject, send them here. And when they're done, they come back and they're back on track for what's happening, or they go on and keep going and finish. But I think that giving the subject matter experts the ability to do some level of variable implementation of a course's structure, and that'll happen next. The other thing I'm excited about is that you haven't seen a lot of music courses in online learning, and we're in the design phases of a music composition card that would allow you to not only build the composition as an author, but also play it using a lot of the tools that are out there, and then have a student test or modify it. So I think that's going to be an exciting thing.
That sounds fun.
Probably what's happening, but I had this strict policy of never telling anyone what was happening, but this is pretty simple, and we're very committed to it. So it'll happen over the next few months.
That actually sounds like a lot of fun. Your own little garage band. That could be
right.
That could be cool. It's funny. When I was younger, I played drums, not very well, but I played. And I tried playing bass. I tried playing guitar. I just wasn't that good at it, but I could sing and I could drum. So those were my things. But when GarageBand came out, I just went bonkers. I went, wow, I can play music now that I never could. And it's amazing how simple they made it for people to play real music. And it's pretty cool. It's sort of funny. I wish it was everywhere. It's only on the Macs right now, but if they ever decided to port, Final Cut Pro and GarageBand to the PC, they'd make billions, I think. But they haven't done that yet. Maybe one day, you never know. But they're just cool products. And it's funny, they're learning products because while you're playing, you're really learning a lot about how music works that you may not have picked up before. So exactly. That's actually pretty neat. So are you a musician at heart?
I'm not. I had uncles that were Grammy Award-winning musicians, but not me. I was the one that didn't get that talent. But I'm a big fan. So.
Yeah. I love music. It's fun. I didn't have the talent either, but it's amazing watching what people can do with that, and some of the fun they have. And you're right. There's a lot of tools out there that you can integrate into something like that to have just a ton of fun. And it may not even be musicians only. It could be corporate people, university guys who use that, and they have a real good time with that. So that's going to be interesting. That'll be fun. I don't know if you've ever heard of like Native Instruments and all that, where they have all the virtual instruments. And then you can combine them and you can create an orchestra without knowing much about music, as long as you have a little sense of timing, to create pieces, orchestral pieces with literally almost no knowledge of music. It is incredible how some of these tools have brought that to the common person, because it is a real, like you said, it's a real skill to get good at music, and it's a real skill to develop software and everything else. So these are, convergence. Everything is converging in our little digital world, so that all these things that are hard or maybe not that easy can become easier. So you're seeing some of that digital convergence.
I am. I can't miss the opportunity though that we've developed these learning cards that are kind of things you'd expect us to create, like a video card or a multi-card that gives you a long sort of flowing WordPress type of output. I talked about the music card. I talked about conditional card. So my challenge to your audience is to, hey, send me ideas for the types of cards you'd like to see. In particular, our multi-card is really great for delivering content that meets the what were the ADA standards, the new standards, the WGAC, I think, with all those new standards. So I think there's really neat ways to implement learning in new cards. So I am very open to card ideas. If you have a great one, send it to me. I'll even give you credit for it. So. That's
great. That's good. You heard it. We'll put that in the show notes too. We'll let people remember to send ideas in. That'll be cool. And and just a quick shout out. I know you have one of your newer people is Darren Lucan, who used to be with Trivantis some time ago, not that long ago. And he's joined you, and I like Darren. He's a great guy. Darren, good luck. I think you guys will have a great time together. And I was glad to see him go there because, and he was saying he's glad to be involved with the product so early in the stages, so new, because it's more exciting. It's nice to influence how something develops. So kudos to Darren. Say hello for me.
Okay.
So Tim, this is great. We're looking forward to seeing what comes out of some of these things, and definitely excited by where you're going with it. So we'll keep bringing Tim on, because this is really the first opportunity we've had in the years we've been on for a new tool to just show up and go, this is cool. And you've got the background and the credibility, like they say, to make it happen. So this is fun.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
And any final thing you want to talk about? We're just about out of time.
I think that, I would just encourage everyone to keep listening and watching your show. I love it, and I'm so excited to be involved. So.
Oh, great. We appreciate it. And we have fun with this. So anyway, well, we will put Tim's information below in the show notes if you want to get a hold of him or anybody in their group to learn more, or to get demos of the product or trials, or buy it. It's well worth it. Anyway, thanks for coming on, Tim. We will have this up and running probably later today, and we'll send you a link as soon as it's up. And for all you people watching, thanks for watching, subscribing, giving us feedback. If you like the show, don't like the show, if you want to get a hold of anybody, if you want to send Tim info, again, down below, we'll have his email or company information for you to contact him. Well, anyway, again, thanks for being on, and we will see you all next week. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.